Welcome to the Innovation Ecosystem Podcast. We interview remarkable and thought-provoking guests about innovation, leadership, and change in the world of business. Whether you're an executive or an entrepreneur, our objective is to help you and your organization create an entrepreneurial culture, become more innovative, and better able to respond to change. Each week, we'll deconstruct world-class performance from the arenas of business, academia, science, and sports. Each week, you can expect key insights, fresh perspectives, and proven tools you can use straight away to make you more successful professionally and personally. With your hosts, Mark Bidwell and Roddy Miller.
There are two types of experience available to us. Our own personal experience, which can be pretty painful at times, and other people's experience, which in many ways is a more efficient source for accelerating learning and making rapid progress. This is what the innovation ecosystem is all about, giving you access to the experience of many leaders in their fields. So today's guest is Gillian Zoe Segal, author of a fascinating book called Getting There, a Book of Mentors. Gillian was sufficiently curious about how leaders actually get to the top of their fields that she went out and asked them. This was by no means easy for someone with no credentials and no access, but with polite persistence, as she calls it, she sat down in one-on-ones with some of the world's most accomplished and fascinating people. So if you are struggling with a major challenge at work, or perhaps starting out on your career and are looking for some inspiration and advice from some of the most successful people on the planet, listen on. So welcome to the Innovation Ecosystem Podcast. Today's guest, Gillian Zoe Segal, is the author of Getting There, a book of mentors in which 30 leaders in diverse fields, many of whom are household names around the world, share their secrets to navigating the rocky road to the top. And one reviewer, Robert Kaplan of Harvard Business School, wrote that the book helps clarify many of the key challenges you must face in building a successful professional life. She's spoken at companies like Google, LexisNexis, and Royal Bank of Canada, and written for Fortune, Forbes, and Business Insider, amongst others. So welcome to the show, Gillian.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Gillian, I'm curious, what led you to spend 5 years of your life on this book?
Growing up, I never really had a mentor, and I always used to look at highly successful people and wonder, how did he figure his career path out? And what does she have that other people don't have? And that kind of thing. So one day I just decided to do a book, and that would be a good excuse to ask these highly successful people everything I was curious about knowing.
And as you went into it and got into it, I mean, what were your assumptions that turned out to be completely wrong, if indeed there were any?
One thing is that I realized is that you really do not need to know where you're headed when you start out. You have to just start doing something and then keep your eyes open for new opportunities and to not be rigid.
Okay.
So a lot of people had no idea where they were headed, but they just had the right mindset.
And how would you characterize that mindset?
To be fluid and open to change.
Okay, and I mean, there's a lot of fantastic stories of people in the book. I mean, any that really resonate to making that point, to illustrate that point about being fluid and ready for change.
Well, there are so many. There's so many. Almost everybody has one of those stories. So. Les Moonves, who's the president and the CEO of CBS, he wanted to be an actor, and he eventually realized that he didn't really have what it took to get to the top, and so he realized that he would be better off on the other side of the camera, and he was able to rise to the top. So sometimes. You're going for something and it's not the right fit. So Warren Buffett explains that knowing what to leave out is as important as knowing what to focus on. So you have to sort of, know your strengths and weaknesses and go for something that's within your circle of competence, as he puts it.
Right, right. And I mean, so you mentioned a couple of folks. I mean, I was going to ask a question around, in the book, there's a mixture of sort of entrepreneurs like Sarah Blakely, like Laird Hamilton, and then there's also the executives like Warren and like Les Moonves. And I'm interested. I mean, do you see any difference between these types of these groups of individuals in terms of how they built out their businesses and their careers, or do they take a very similar approach?
You know what? I think they all have a very similar approach. I think that everybody in my book is an entrepreneur, whether you want to call them that or an intrapreneur. Yep. They're all leaders and trailblazers. Whether they're doing it within a company or whether it's their own company, but they're all blazing new trails. So
interesting. So I mean, when you say blazing new trails, I mean, I guess at the heart of that is innovation. I mean, they are changing how they do things. They're developing new products. They're looking at the world differently. And your background, I mean, you've been a lawyer, but you also, you went into this, your first book was a photographic book. So you're clearly, a creative individual. So what struck you about how innovation really happens on this, Gillian?
Well, I think that one of the key elements is, knowing that just because something has been done one way for years doesn't mean that it's the best way to do it, and it doesn't mean that another way won't work. So everybody, in my book questions things. They question everything. They don't blindly follow others. They think on their own. And I think that's, essential for success and for innovation.
So, I mean, let's go to, maybe Warren is someone who, a lot of people know about his story and his success. I mean, what does that look like for Warren in terms of questioning and challenging? Any examples from your conversation with him or your research into how he did it?
Well, he doesn't think that, that big groups of people are ever going to make such a great decision. So, meaning if you ask for everyone's consensus before you make an investment, you're not going to have the best track record. So he has to think on his own, and he might decide that he wants to buy a company that other people didn't want to, but he has to sort of follow his gut. And that's how he's been able to rise above, what everybody else is doing.
Interesting. Because I think one of our mutual friends, Guy Spear, he has a very similar approach, I think, doesn't he? Which is one of the reasons why he relocated from New York to Zurich.
Yes. He really admires Warren Buffett, and he sort of lives his life in a similar way. And so Warren is not a herd follower, and so much so that he doesn't even live anywhere near the herd in his field. He doesn't live near New York, or he's out in Nebraska.
Yeah, but once a year, of course, the herd comes to him, doesn't it?
Yes. So here, I'm going to read you something that he says from the book. He says, an important quality in my field is emotional stability. You have to be able to think independently. If I take a poll on every investment decision I make, I'm going to be doing exactly what everyone else is. And I usually don't think much of that. As your company gets larger and you have larger groups making decisions, the decisions get more homogenized. I don't think you'll ever get a brilliant investment decision out of a large committee. I must have a temperament that lets me think for myself. When I come to a conclusion, I can't be bothered if others disagree with me. That's tough for a lot of people, but as long as I feel that I know the facts, I'm okay with it. So that sums it up from Warren Buffett.
Wow. Yeah. So, one of the things that reading through a number of these
these essays of the mentors that struck me is the role of serendipity and of good fortune. And there's a few in here which, just to call out, I mean, Bloomberg talks about this wonderful quote from Warren Buffett about 80% of success in life is showing up. Sarah Blakely, she tried on some white trousers and had the epiphany to cut off the pantyhose, which for those of us who speak English, if you like, those are tights. Jim Koch, I mean, he discovered a load of old beer recipes in his attic, and then went on to found that fantastic business. So how important do you think is luck in success?
I think luck is out there, but I don't think that any of those examples that you just gave were luck. I think a couple things. I think, number one, the harder you work, the luckier you get. I didn't make that up. That's a saying, but I believe in it.
I think it's a golfer who says, the more I practice, the luckier I get. I think which is very true.
So the harder you work, the luckier you get. The more you put yourself out there, the more, good opportunities you might notice. But I think, calling Sarah Blakely trying on the white trousers luck isn't true, because how many other women have put on the white trousers? People are doing that all day long. So it's not luck. She sort of spent a lifetime preparing herself for her success. And she actually talks about that in Getting There. She was selling fax machines door to door for 8 years, and that helped get her immune to the word no, which is important in any business, because no matter what you do, things aren't always going to go your way. And if you let yourself get derailed when something doesn't go your way, you're in trouble, because no matter what it is, when Warren Buffett started out, there were people who didn't put their money with him. There are people who didn't invest in every successful company. So basically, she spent a lot of time doing a lot of things. She talks about all the different little things in her essay, but preparing herself for the time when she finally had her aha idea, she was prepared to see it through in a way that many people wouldn't be.
So that is, I mean, this idea of getting immune to the word no, I mean, resilience you talk about, I mean, it's a huge theme in the lives of many of your subjects. And I guess it's also a theme in terms of how you created the book, because you got a lot of people who said no, and you were pretty immune to that by the end. So, where do you, I suppose I'm curious, I mean, where do you think this kind of resilience comes from, for your mentors, but also for you, because you exhibited it in the process of creating this book?
Well, I think that, number one, it's good to just consciously know that resilience is key for success, and that everyone is going to fail, everybody is going to get rejected. But the trick is to get yourself to stand back up when that happens and try again, or learn from your mistake and try something new. Now, I could give you many, many, many examples from my book of people, who failed and then were a success. Every single person in my book has failed at things and then gotten themselves back up. But it is a lot easier to do this if you're really passionate about what you're doing, if you really believe in it. So if you're doing something, if you're pursuing something because you think you should, or, whatever, for just for the money, you're going to have a hard time getting yourself back up when you fall. But if you're passionate about it, it's a lot easier. It's never easy, but it's a lot easier. So with my book, I loved the material I was getting from each of my subjects. And I was so into it that if someone said they didn't like one of the essays, I would think, oh my God, you're crazy. Like, I can't imagine anyone not liking this. So I was so into it. I was so sure that people would love the book. I was so sure that everybody in the book would be happy that they had said yes to me, that I, had the fuel to keep on going and to pursue people for 5 years and put up with a lot of rejections. And, a lot of times where it would be very easy to say, I'm just going to get in bed and never get out.
Yeah.
But
so you were able to tap into this kind of this core sense of passion and purpose that what you were doing was creating something that would be of value, essentially.
Yes, I was passionate about what I was doing. I knew I was going to do it well. It was within my circle of competence. I knew that. I knew that each person who was in it would be happy with the end product, and that readers would really benefit from it. So that's what I felt. And so no matter what your business is, if you're creating a product or providing a service, whatever it is, you've got to really sort of believe in it. One of my subjects, John Paul DeJoria, he's a billionaire. He's a co-founder of the Patron Spirits Company and John Paul Mitchell Hair Systems. But he says that when he is selling anything, it needs to be something where he really thinks that he's helping people if they buy it.
Yep.
Like whether it be a shampoo or helping them discover the best tequila. It doesn't really need to be helping. But he thinks like, try this, you're going to thank me for it,
So it's essentially, I don't know where I heard it, but the sales process being a transfer of enthusiasm, essentially.
Yeah, but so it's important to really be enthusiastic. If you're selling a shampoo that you don't even love, then then you're not going to be the best salesperson. But if you could say, you have to try this, it is the best shampoo ever.
Yeah, that works.
Don't you want that shampoo? Yeah.
A lot of our audience are either people in large organizations struggling to make stuff happen, to have an impact beyond their role, if you like, or increasingly people thinking about, do they want to, what do they want, people starting out in their career, if you like. What would you say to those sorts of individuals? What advice would you give if they were to look to you, Gillian, as their mentor? What would be the couple of things that you'd say are absolutely fundamental that they need to do as they start on this journey of making a change or, building their professional career, if you like?
Okay, I'll run through a few of the best advice I've got. Okay, so understand your circle of competence. Mm-hmm. So basically, focus on what you do best. Know what you're good at. Know what you're not good at. So we've already discussed that. But if you're not a numbers person, don't do something where you got to be crunching numbers all the time. You've got to know that the guy who's the dean of Harvard Business School was trying to be an engineer, and he really wasn't great at it. And he eventually, accepted that and moved into a less quantitative field and rose right to the top. So,
and for those who are just starting out, because if they don't have that level of self-awareness about their technical skills, I love this quote from this woman Kathy, who gave a commencement speech about the making a backup disc. I don't know whether you just let me read it, because it's really resonant. It's take the classes, the friends, and the family that have inspired you the most. Save them in your permanent memory and make a backup disc. When you remember what you love, you will remember who you are. If you remember who you are, you can do anything.
Yes, that sort of put me on the course of getting into photography, which led to my first book, which was more photography oriented, and then that led to this Getting There book, which is a lot more text oriented. So. Even though I did photograph each of the subjects.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that was the first piece of advice, but I interrupted you. What's the next piece? Okay,
so you understand your circle of competence, then harness your passions. Do something that you're passionate about. Be fluid and open to change. So don't be stuck in one way, because the world changes, opportunities changes. So, keep your eyes open. You've got to create your own opportunities. So no one in my book waited around for someone to recognize a talent in them and offer them a break. So it would be great if the world worked that way, but unfortunately it rarely does. So if you want something, you've got to figure out a way to make it happen. You've got to take the bull by the horns. A great example of that is Anderson Cooper. He couldn't even get an entry-level job at any of the major networks. He ended up as a fact checker. I don't want to spend too much time telling his story, but it's a great story. He finally had to quit his job as a fact checker and borrowed a friend's video camera and went overseas to shoot stories by himself. And he lived on $5 a day. And that's how he showed the world that he could be on air, because no one was going to come up to the fact checker and say, we think you should be on air. That's like a Cinderella story that rarely happens. So
great. Yep.
Okay, question everything. We already discussed that. Don't blindly follow others. Think outside the box. A huge one is don't let the fear of failure deter you. I love this quote. It's from Kathy Ireland, she started out as a Sports Illustrated swimsuit model. And as she was getting older, she wanted to do something that wasn't dependent on her looks. So she tried for years at starting her own brand and failed for years. Mm-hmm. She tried all these different things. Finally, she hit it with a pair of socks. And now she runs a $2 billion enterprise. So here's the quote. She says, if you never fail, it means you're not trying hard enough. So next time when you're doing whatever it is, your entrepreneurial venture or intrapreneurial venture, whatever it is, and it's something you tried doesn't work, give yourself a pat on the back and say, I'm doing my job, I'm trying. And then get up.
This is what I say to my kids when they're in ski camp. I said, if you're not falling over, you're not trying hard enough.
Exactly. I said that to a kid last night, actually, who had skied for the first time, and he was saying that he fell. And I said, if you don't ever fall, you're not trying, you're not learning, you've got to.
Yeah. And I think in an organization, I got in trouble. I used to get in trouble when I was running my teams. I used to say to people, if you don't want to quit at least once a month, you're not trying hard enough, because, that's the challenge of, innovating in a large organization is the resistance. It can be overwhelming. So having that mindset of just doing whatever it takes actually does make it's a bit of a game changer in many respects.
Mm-hmm. And that's my best advice.
Okay, it's pretty good stuff. So and in terms of mindset, I was struck by your great story of meeting with Warren Buffett or being in the same room with him, and trying to figure out how you're going to get close to him, and then you essentially, I'm putting words in your mouth here a little bit, Gillian, but I guess you asked yourself the question, what would Sarah do, right?
Yes.
And
I channeled Sarah Blakely, and I said to myself, in order to get myself to go over to him when I really wasn't supposed to, supposed to go, propose something. But I said Sarah would never let him leave this building without going up to him. And then I went right up and asked him to be in my book. And he said yes. And it's had a huge impact on my life. That's how I know Guy, because I've sort of stayed in touch with Warren and met a lot of incredible people through going to some events of his.
So I'm curious, because you talk about the subtitle of the book is a book of mentors. Do you have do any of these of the 30 would they consider themselves as your mentor, or vice versa, or have you?
Vice versa, like am I their mentor?
No. Would you consider them as their mentor? As your...
You know what? Well, so it's called a book of mentors because they're virtual mentors for everybody.
Yeah.
And I have kept in touch with a number of them. But calling, I don't think I would formally call anybody my mentor, but I have kept in touch with several of the people in my book, and that's really nice. And they continue to inspire me.
Yeah, absolutely. And because a lot of the lessons are lifelong and they're enduring. So I guess, yeah, no, I can understand that. So, I mean, the book came out last year. I mean, are there any, if you were going to start the book again, so start this 5-year journey again, although it'd probably be much shorter now because you know how to do it. But I mean, is there anyone else who you would put in the book as, or you'd like to include, who wasn't on your radar screen 6-7 years ago?
You know what? So I think there's like a lot of people who could be in the book. There's no one who I needed to have in the book because I think that once you get sort of a critical mass, you've got all the bases covered, and if I kept going on and on, it would get repetitive. So I tried to keep it not so repetitive, but I wish I had more women in the book. Mm-hmm. That's a challenge. There wasn't as big of a pool to fish from, or whatever. Not like I got to pick, but so I would have loved to have more women in the book.
Yeah. Okay. You also, just changing gears a little bit, Gillian, I mean, you do some speaking. So as we said in the intro, you've spoken at companies like Google, Royal Bank of Canada, LexisNexis. I mean, what kind of topics do you get called in to talk about? And I suppose more importantly, what really resonates in individuals in these are large, these are very large organizations now, all of them. Just interested in what do you talk to them about, and what resonates, and what kind of conversations are you having with them as a result of your stories to them?
Well, so it depends on the group of people. There's a lot in my book. I also speak at schools and different things. So it depends on the group of people. If I've spoke to sales forces, so I focus on one thing. If I'm speaking to people who are just beginning their career, there's another focus. But in general, I'll run through the main themes that I've come across in the book. A lot of that was in the advice that I gave earlier. And I'll tell specific stories of different people, but it depends who the group is. And the biggest question I get asked, or the most common question that I get asked is, how did I get all these people to participate in the book? Because it's not easy. And basically the answer to that is it took a lot of polite persistence, not taking no for an answer. I say, when I was approaching somebody, I would say, if the front door isn't locked, I'm going to try the back door. If that is locked, I'll try the side door. If that doesn't work, let me try climbing in a window. So basically, I would have to try different avenues, because every single person out there has gatekeepers whose job it is to bounce you. And I am not Oprah calling to do an interview. Yeah. I was pretty much a no-name. So I had to, be persistent without being totally annoying to get my foot in the door.
Yeah. And I mean, today, I guess, one of the beauties of this project of yours is that you understand how, what are the characteristics of these individuals. But I mean, this is also about proximity, isn't it? I mean, surrounding yourself with people. What is it? The expression? If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. I mean, does that kind of how does that look in your life today? I mean, do you still continue to do this and connect with these kinds of individuals? And if so, why do you do it?
Well, I mean, okay, back to Warren Buffett, who I just love. He says one of the best things you can do in life is to surround yourself with people who are better than you are. Yep. High-grade people. You will end up behaving more like them, and they in turn will get it back from you. It's like a planetary system. If you hang around with people who behave worse than you, pretty soon you'll start being pulled in that direction. That's just the way it seems to work. Who you choose to associate with matters. So I love that theory. It's good for everybody to know at any age or stage in your life. So I continually try to hang out with people who I admire.
Brilliant. And I guess, we in our last conversation, you said you're going back to Omaha, but you also had a clash with an event, I think, called the Happy Conference in Portugal. What have you decided to do, Gillian?
Oh, no. Yes, I'm going to Omaha.
Okay. Yeah, Omaha trumps the Happy Conference. Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So let me just begin to wrap this up. I sent through a couple of questions for you. The first one, Gillian, is what are your morning rituals?
Well, I like to check out the news as soon as I check my phone. I get my daughter out the door. I read some news, and I like to exercise.
Excellent. Okay, great. Second question, what have you changed your mind about recently?
That is a tough question. One of the big realizations doing the book, and if I could call that recently, is that you don't really have to know where you're going. It's the idea of just being fluid and open to change. Because I sort of thought at one point that you had to know a lot more in the beginning where you wanted to be headed. And some people are lucky enough to know that, but very few people are. Most people sort of learn as they go along and have a fluid path.
Yeah. Okay. And that was a big insight, I guess, from this journey.
Yes.
Yeah. And at the risk of this question being duplicative, I mean, but what advice would you have for your 25-year-old self?
Okay, it's not going to be do whatever. I will not duplicate anything I've said.
Very good. Thank you.
So okay, I think a big problem that people run into, and it's something I personally have run into, is getting knocked off course at the early stages of some kind of a business idea. And in her Getting There essay, Sarah Blakely says that it's best to keep your young idea secret from anyone who can't directly help it move forward. And she explains that because ideas are the most vulnerable the moment you have them. When you hear discouraging remarks early on, it'll take you off course. And right when you have an idea, that's when you're sort of tempted to talk to your friends and family and say, what about this? And it's so easy for people to say why anything won't work, why Facebook won't work or the internet won't work or whatever it is. Why send an email if you could just make a phone call? Or, why, whatever it is. So I think I would remind myself to stay focused if I believe in something and not let all the naysayers out there affect me. Good
advice. Yep. Okay. And I mean, I'm curious, what are you working on now? I mean, having done this book, which was clearly, a big undertaking, how do you take the lessons? Because you started off this, to actually understand what characterizes these kinds of people. You've got the lessons from, an extraordinary group of individuals. What are you doing with them? What's your next project?
Well, so they have inspired me to do something entrepreneurial, and I am working on several things, three things right now. And I'll have to keep those secret, as Sarah Blakely says.
Okay.
You can't read Getting There and then not want to sort of, shoot for the stars and harness your passions and that kind of a thing.
So when do you think, when will we be, when are you going to start sharing some of these projects? I mean, is it imminent or is it a case of?
No, it could be imminent.
Okay.
It could be imminent.
But clearly you've got your, you're obviously passionate about them and you're harnessing all the lessons
yes.
in service of these projects.
Yes.
Great. So where can people get in touch with you, Gillian?
The best way is LinkedIn.
Okay.
If you have a photo, I'll accept you, and then you could message me.
Excellent. And I think
or Gillian Zoe Segal at gmail.com is an email address.
all one word, Gillian Zoe Segal. Okay.
Gillian Zoe Segal at gmail.com.
So we'll put those in the show notes as well. So Gillian, I mean, it's been a great pleasure having you on the show. I'm sorry we're not going to be able to meet this time round in Omaha, but perhaps next time. I'm sure our audience enjoyed it as much as I did. And thanks very much for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
Gillian's story of how she managed to pull together such a remarkable group of people and encourage them to tell their stories in an authentic and open way is a fascinating one. And not only can we learn from Gillian's persistence and her mindset as she went out on the journey of this project, but of course from her subjects, who offer an excellent advice too. For example, I'm a real Warren Buffett fan, as is Gillian, and I've written in the past about the importance of the proximity principle, surrounding yourself with people who are far smarter than you. And this is a constant theme in the podcast series in general terms, as well as coming out of Gillian's book. Another theme that came out is the importance of asking the right questions, which Kevin Kelly, an earlier guest, talked about. And the third theme which I picked up is the importance of self-awareness, developing that skill. And Whitney Johnson, the previous guest on our show, gave us a number of tools for doing that. So next week's guest is Chris Bezic, an advisor to boards of some of the world's most innovative companies. Like me, he believes that culture provides the only true sustainable source of innovation, and he describes how he helps executive teams develop cultures of innovation. We hope you enjoy our show. Feel free to make use of the transcripts, the visual recordings, and the other resources that we develop to make you and your organizations more entrepreneurial and innovative. These are all available on our website, www.innovationecosystem.com. Till next time, have a great day.